Hey. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I think that was Justin and someone else too. Popped up real quick. Yeah, so welcome back to Plant Kingdom. Obviously you came back, so I did something right, or you didn't have a lot of other options. But good morning and welcome back. I'm really excited to get into it. Obviously I am in not my same setting as last time. That's because I'm in Brooklyn. Obviously I brought the Michigan weather with me, unfortunately. Yeah, thanks. All right, so let me share my screen. And let me make it big. Come on. All right. And let me get this here in the corner. I was able to, there is a merged Canvas page now available. So you should be able to see it in your Canvas courses. The reason that'll be nice is because there's like discussion boards for each lecture for you guys to get. Good morning. Thank you everyone for saying good morning. It's nice. There's discussion boards for each lecture. That is a place you can write questions or comments in so that you can get participation points. And like I said last time, it doesn't have to be you don't have to write a paragraph. Just write a little comment, little question, something like that. And then I can give you some participation points to add to your participation points for the class, each class. If you miss class, that's a way you can also get participation points for a class that you missed. Whoops. So that's nice. Okay. Today we're going to be going over something. It's definitely one of the more tricky concepts of the course. It's something that's called alternation of generations, which is the life cycle of plants. It's a little different than the life cycle that we're used to with animals, but it's a very important concept for the course. And it's a concept that we're going to come back to almost every lecture going forward. So today when we go through it, if it seems a little hard to understand, or if you feel confused today about anything with it, don't worry, because we will come back to it many times, but we have to learn at least one time before we can start to really wrap our heads around it. Again, my name is Rebecca, and you can email me here at if you have any questions or comments or things I need to know. Okay, last time I went over the syllabus, talked a bit about what the course is going to look like, right? Talked about the importance of plants. We talked about the domain eukarya, right? And the plant kingdom divisions. Today we're going to talk, and we briefly talked about taxonomy and binomial nomenclature. That was last time. You were also supposed to, for homework tonight, read a very small part of that State of the World's Plants and Fungi. And so this is not for a grade right now. This is not for a grade, but we're going to just do a really quick poll. So I think do that. And so if you read it, good, you should do well on the poll. If you didn't read it, I still want you to try to answer the poll questions. So again, this is not for a grade, all right? It's not for a grade. I just want to kind of get a sense. So I'm going to launch the poll. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to work on that. So you should be able to see the poll questions now. Let me know if you cannot. And again, this is not for a grade, so this is not the time to go try to pull up that document so that you can look at it for the first time so you can answer the poll. It's supposed to be quick. So If you didn't read it, that's okay. Just try to answer the questions as best as you can. And I'll give you guys a few minutes to work on that while I get a cup of tea. Few minutes. All right, how we doing here? I'll give you guys about one more minute because people are still coming in with answers. Question in the chat box, are these slides on Canvas? Yes, they will be on Canvas. The slides from lecture 1 are already available on Canvas. Let me know if you're having a hard time finding them or seeing them there. Slides from lecture 2 are not on Canvas yet. They'll be on there in about a little bit after class ends. All right, take about one more minute and then I'm going to call it. No problem, Mara. Am I saying your name correctly? Yay. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. All right. So I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah, share results. Let's make this big. Can you guys see the Results of the poll?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Justin. Great. Thank you, Nora. Yes, so just to go over these really quickly, this is from the reading that we did for homework. So the first question asks you about when plants are found when plants are found that are new to science but used by local people, what is it important that happens, right? And it's important, most people got this, that any benefits derived from those species contribute to the well-being of those local people, right? There's an ethical duty there. Protecting biodiversity is, the answer was number 2, important, and humans have an ethical duty to care for both this planet as well as our own needs, because the planet provides for us, so we want it to be able to do that for as long as we're here. So we have to kind of protect that. Number 3, 3 countries, Brazil, China, and Australia, have the highest number of newly described plant species for several decades. Why? And most people got that they are both hotspots of biodiversity, but there's also a large number of taxonomists working in those areas. And then lastly, when a potential new plant is found and collected, the correct answer is that it can take a very long time to determine if it is new to science and named. Yes, scientists can use DNA to help determine whether it is a new to science, but they don't only use DNA. They use DNA, they use visual characteristics, right? What the flowers look like, what the leaves look like, and other techniques. Okay, great. So I'm going to stop sharing this. Cool. That's good. Like I said, that's not for a grade. It's more so that I know that, number 1, the polls work, because it's not something I'm familiar with. And 2, just to kind of make sure you guys are staying on top of the ball. All right. So today we're going to go over mitosis and meiosis. I think most of you here are 4th year biology majors, so the concepts of mitosis and meiosis should be relatively familiar to you, but we will go over it just to have a refresh, because it's also important for us to understand the life cycle of plants. We have to know what mitosis and meiosis are. So, and the life cycle of plants is this alternation of generations. So that's why we do that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about what's a switch in dominant generation in the higher evolved plants. And that will become more clear as we go through these slides. So if you have any questions as we go forward, feel free to write them in the chat box or raise your hand. Either one is fine. Okay, so mitosis, like I said, it should be review, but just in case, and yes, these slides will be available on Blackboard after class. What is meiosis? Meiosis is a type of cell division, and mitosis occurs in body cells or somatic cells, body cells, cells in your arm, cells in your ear, cells on your foot, right? Body cells. Because of that, they're occurring in cells that are called diploid, or you can say 2N. Okay, diploid and 2N are the same thing. Like I said, it's a type of nuclear division, right? Which means you're taking a cell and dividing it into more cells. And well, actually, technically, you're taking a nucleus and dividing that. But yes, usually it's cells. Whole cells are made usually accompanied by a process called cytokinesis, which is when you have a cell membrane surrounding the new nuclei. But not always, and we'll see later as the course goes on that there are some times when mitosis occurs and no cytokinesis occurs. So not always. But this is the most important part, right? After mitosis occurs, the result.
I was actually that in my class. Under here.
Hello?
Like when we just opened into the screen.
Hello?
Like,
oh
I
boy.
forgot we got 400. I thought it was like
Rachel, geez, okay. Come on, Rachel. Gotta mute. All right. Yes, so this is the most important part, is that when mitosis is finished, the result is 2 genetically identical daughter nuclei. It's okay, no worries. two genetically identical daughter nuclei, two genetically identical. Both of them have the same chromosome number. Both of the nuclei that are made are going to be 2N. And not only that, the two nuclei that are made are going to have the same number of chromosomes as the mother cell that it came from, 2N. So this is looking at these words. This is kind of like whatever. This is not maybe the most intuitive way to think about this. So just to have this here, here's the breakdown. You have a mother cell, and we call it mother cell even if it occurs in males, right? Like it's just what we call it. We just call it mother cell. The cell that undergoes mitosis is called mother cell. Always. That's diploid. That undergoes mitosis, and then the result is these two daughter nuclei. We always call them daughter nuclei. We never call them son nuclei, which are also equal to the mother, 2N as well. Okay. Well, this, as we go forward, we'll have more of how this is kind of working, but we don't need to know the nitty gritty. We don't need to know every single detail of how mitosis occurs, which your book goes into. You don't need to know that. You just need to know what goes in, 2N or diploid mother cell, and what comes out. Two daughter nuclei that are both 2N. That's all you need to know. Why do we have mitosis? Mitosis is important for growth. So if you think of a human, right? You start off as a little baby, right? Start off as a little baby. You need to grow lots of stuff if you're going to grow up to be, a grown-up, right? You have to grow more skin cells, bone cells, vasculature, etc. And the way that that happens is via mitosis. Just like a human baby, right? Yeah, plants also have to grow from a seed to a mature plant using this process of mitosis. So in addition to growth of body cells, we also use mitosis for repairing body tissues. So for example, maybe you have fallen before and you've scraped your knee and your knee is damaged. Well, now your body, the cells next to the damaged part, are going to undergo mitosis to build new skin cells, new vasculature, and make your knee better, right? And just like that happens in us, that also happens in plants. Okay, that's mitosis. Mitosis, you have a 2N mother cell, undergoes mitosis, and you have 2N nuclei, two of them. That's mitosis. For meiosis, it's a little different. So mitosis was used for growth and repair. Meiosis is used for sex. So you could say it leads to the production of gametes. When you hear the word gametes, you should usually think egg and sperm. Gametes are not diploid, they are haploid, 1N. Haploid and 1N are the same thing. You might notice that 1 is half of 2, right? So the chromosome number is reduced by half. Meiosis is also a process of nuclear division, also usually accompanied by cytokinesis, but not always. And the result, this is meiosis 1. There's 2 parts. Don't get freaked out about that. I'll show you how to sum it up. But the result of meiosis 1 is 2 daughter nuclei, and those daughter nuclei have the same chromosome number as each other, which is 1N, but they have half of the chromosome number as the mother cell, which was diploid. And again, we're going to be going through this in a way that if it seems confusing right now, it might start to feel a little bit better. But this is also technically review, right? So meiosis 1, you have a 2N or diploid mother cell, goes through meiosis 1, result is 2 daughter nuclei that each are haploid, 1N. There's a second stage of meiosis, which is meiosis 2. And all that happens there is that these two daughter nuclei are each going to divide. That's all that happens there for our purposes. Oh my gosh, go away thing. Okay. So those two daughter nuclei, they're haploid, those are going to divide such that you go from 2 to 4 total daughter nuclei, but they all are haploid, 1N, and they all have half the chromosome number as the mother cell. Okay. I just kind of laying the groundwork here so that you have these slides when you are trying to wrap your head around this later. Mother cell 2N undergoes meiosis 1. 2 daughter nuclei that are each haploid or 1N. Meiosis 2 happens and they divide. Now we have 4 daughter nuclei that are each 1N. Okay. So we went here before to show, before we showed this, right? Human beings need to grow, plants need to grow, right? Human beings need to repair damage to their body tissues, so do plants, right? For mitosis. But with meiosis, things are a little different when you compare humans versus plants. We have to talk about that a little bit in order for us to understand this whole alternation of generation thing. So in humans, meiosis leads directly to the production of gametes, right? Gametes, egg and sperm. So in humans, when meiosis occurs, you either end up with 4 sperm or 4 eggs, right? That's how that works. So here, this is saying this is like in animals, so this includes us, but you can think you have a diploid individual, 2N. The cells are going to undergo meiosis 1 and 2. The results are 4 gametes. And then eventually the gametes will come together, right? Egg and sperm will come together, process called fertilization. And the result is a zygote, which is a 2N individual, right? Bear with me. I know you're like, oh my gosh, bear with me. Why are the gametes, egg and sperm, why do they have to undergo meiosis? Well, because human beings have to have, or are supposed to have, a certain specific number of chromosomes. All animals basically have their set number of chromosomes that's for that species. And you can't get a new human without the fusion of egg and sperm. So the genetic information in the egg and the genetic information in the sperm has to be half of what the original human had in order for when they fuse to have the proper number of chromosomes. So for example, here, look, right? Human sex cell. So like, for example, let's pretend this is a cell that's in the testes, right? It's a diploid cell. If it's in the testes, that's going to undergo meiosis and cytokinesis and result in sperm. And the sperm is going to be haploid. So look, in the testes, it was 2N or diploid. The sperm that results is 1N or haploid, right? 1N or haploid. In humans have 46 chromosomes. So in humans, 2N equals 46. The reason we use the letter N to represent chromosome number is because all different organisms have a different number of chromosomes, and we don't really need to keep track of that. Like all the plants that we learn about have different numbers of chromosomes. We don't need to know the number, so we just say N to represent the number. But in humans, okay, fine, 46. The cell in the testes undergo meiosis and cytokinesis, and the result is sperm that has half the number of chromosomes as the individual that sperm came from. If we were in the ovaries, right, we have a cell that undergoes meiosis 1 and 2 to result in an egg. the egg is also going to have half the number of chromosomes as the individual that the egg came from. That's so that when egg and sperm come together, the new individual, so egg and sperm come together in fertilization, and the new individual has, what do you know, 46 chromosomes, right? The right number of chromosomes for our species. So that's why meiosis is super important. If sperm was swimming around with 46 chromosomes and egg was hanging out waiting with 46 chromosomes, if that sperm and egg came together, you'd have an individual with 92 chromosomes. That's not going to work. And then what? Now you have 92 chromosome sperm that's going to fuse with what, 46 or 92? That's why you have to have meiosis. You have to have, oh, that's confusing. You have to have the number of chromosomes when you're making gametes. Sorry, yeah, that's hard to say. Okay, so in humans, right? In humans, meiosis leads directly to the production of gametes, egg and sperm. Plants are complicated, so they don't lead directly to the production of egg and sperm. There's this extra kind of step. So in plants, meiosis leads to the production of spores. So you can make a note to yourself. In humans, meiosis leads to the production of gametes, egg and sperm. In plants, meiosis leads to the production of spores. But those spores are going to grow into what's called gametophyte plant. We'll learn about that soon. And it's going to be the gametophyte plant that makes the gametes. So, just so we see here. So on this slide here, look, compare it to the last slide we saw. Here's a diploid individual, right? Don't worry about the words right now. Just worry about this is a diploid individual. Diploid individual is going to undergo meiosis. Because we're in plants, this is going to not lead directly to gametes. This is going to lead instead to the production of spores that are haploid. Those spores are going to grow into individuals that we call gametophyte plants. Those gametophyte plants are going to also be haploid because they came about from a spore, which was haploid. And those gametophyte plants are going to be the things that make the gametes, egg and sperm. This is confusing. I know. That's why we're going to go over it today and a bunch of other times, because this is a weird thing plants do. This is really also cool. What this means is that plants, technically each plant has 2 phases or generations to complete a single life cycle. So it's like 2 individuals to make 1 life cycle, which is, come on. I mean, we wish, right? We wish you could just be you for a while and then be a whole nother individual for a while. That's really, really cool. But also weird. What are we talking about here, right? 2 individuals for 1 life cycle. Rebecca's lost it, right? No. So this is a maybe unfamiliar concept, but there's some examples that you may have encountered before that might seem a little familiar, even though it's not exactly the same thing. So for example, think about a butterfly. Most people know that a butterfly comes from a caterpillar, right? You have an egg, the egg hatches a caterpillar. Caterpillar goes around and eats a bunch of leaves. Then eventually it goes into its little pupa. And then ultimately a butterfly comes out, right? It's genetically the same individual. It's still the same genetic individual. It's just that sometimes this individual is a caterpillar and sometimes this individual is a butterfly. So that's kind of like what I'm talking about with this alternation of generations in plants, although this is not the same thing. But this is not right. This is not the same thing, but it's a good way to kind of get your brain ready to think about it, right? Because you're used to this idea. Caterpillar turns into a butterfly, right? All right. Before we go, before I kind of give you a roadmap of alternation of generations, I've got to give you a few definitions that you will use in this class, and meaning like all the other lectures these words will come up. So today they're feeling a little bit, it's early in the morning, it's snowing outside. Just know that we're going to see these words over and over and over and over again. So they'll start to feel familiar. Alternation of generations. It's the alternation between a haploid gametophyte plant or generation and a diploid sporophyte plant or generation in the life cycle of sexually reproducing plants. That's what alternation of generation is. Haploid, diploid plants. Sporophyte and gametophyte plant. So what I like to do to help you guys learn these more complicated words, it's kind of break them down for you. So as I say here, sporo refers to spores and phyte means plant. So this is a plant that makes spores, right? Sporophyte plants are diploid, and they are going to be the ones that make spores, which are haploid, right? It's a sporophyte plant, so a plant that makes spores. Gametophyte plant, gameto, refers to gametes, egg and sperm, gameto, gametes, and phyte still means plant. So this is a plant that makes gametes. Because gametophyte plant grew from a spore, the gametophyte plant itself is haploid. So remember, sporophyte is diploid, gametophyte plant is haploid. Sporophyte plant makes spores, right? It says it in the name, sporophyte. Gametophyte gametophyte plant makes gametes, egg and sperm. Just to point this out real quick, so if you're a 2N plant that makes 1N spores, you have to have something that halves, you have to half the chromosome number, right? So that's going to happen via meiosis. So meiosis occurs on the sporophyte plant. If you are a haploid gametophyte plant and you're making haploid gametes, you don't have to have the chromosome number. It's 1N to 1N. So you can just use mitosis. This is just so you have these words. A few more terms before we kind of go through this process. So sporangium, or the plural is sporangia. This is a structure or an organ that makes spores. Antheridium, or the plural is antheridia, is a structure or organ that makes sperm. And archegonium, plural archegonia, is a structure or organ that houses and makes, or that produces and holds onto or houses an egg. So just to put this together, right? You have a sporophyte plant. You have a sporophyte plant that makes spores. So if you go, sporophyte plant makes spores. So sporophyte plant will have on it sporangium, because sporangia is the organ that makes the spores. Gametophyte plants make gametes, egg and sperm. Therefore, gametophyte plants are going to have on them organs that make sperm and organs that make eggs, right? All right. Now that we know the basics, and again, if anyone has any questions at any time, feel free to jump in, but I know today it's kind of like hearing these terms for the first time and kind of letting them hit your brain. So it's totally fine to just kind of like take it all in. But now that we know the basics, we're going to go through the process of alternation of generations with a hypothetical plant, kind of put it all together. So here's our sporophyte plant, which is diploid, right? Notice it's blue. I have this color coded for diploid and haploid. So sporophyte plant, diploid, since it's a sporophyte plant, we know it's a plant that makes spores, right? Sporophyte, plant that makes spores. spores are haploid, so we know somewhere meiosis has to occur. So on the sporophyte plant is an organ that makes spores. That organ is called a sporangium. It's also diploid because it's on the sporophyte plant. Inside of that sporangium is spore mother cells that are diploid. Those spore mother cells that are inside of the sporangium are going to undergo meiosis and cytokinesis to make spores. Don't worry about tetrad right now, just worry about spores. Notice the color change because we're going from diploid to haploid. So now, though we have spores, those spores are going to grow. Here we go. We have a spore, right? Haploid. That spore is going to grow into the gametophyte plant, which is haploid as well. We just learned gametophyte. It's a phyte or a plant that makes what? Gametes. Phyte that makes gametes, egg, and sperm. So if it makes egg and sperm, it must have organs on it where egg and sperm can be created, right? Ah, there they are. So you have antheridiums, which make, or sorry, you have an antheridium, which makes sperm, and you have archegonium that makes egg. There you go. And that's going to be via the process of mitosis because you don't need to, you're going from one end to one end. Eventually, sperm and egg are going to come together. So 1N sperm, 1N egg come together, fertilization to make 2N zygote. 2N zygote is going to grow into a young plant and eventually mature into a sporophyte plant. Going forward in this class, this slide right here is one of your best resources because no matter who we talk about, whatever plants we talk about in future lectures, all of these things are present. All of these things occur. So definitely, like when I post these slides, this is a good slide to just have, I think, handy in life. So a few things to point out here. We have these processes, right? When you go from diploid to haploid, you go meiosis to cytokinesis. I also show you here fertilization when you go from haploid, sperm and egg, to diploid zygote, right? But just know that mitosis is happening pretty much everywhere else. For example, on a sporophyte plant, you have to grow an organ that makes spores, right? That growth is gonna happen via mitosis and cytokinesis to make that sporangium. Inside that sporangium, there's gonna be spore mother cells. Those had to grow, right? Via mitosis and cytokinesis. Likewise, once a spore is made, it has to grow into a gametophyte plant. And that's gonna happen via mitosis and cytokinesis. And it's pretty much everywhere else, right? So just keep that in mind. I just don't put it on the slide because it's a little, look, you see how it looks when I put it there. All right. That was a hypothetical example of a plant, a hypothetical plant. So now let's do the same thing, but in a real life plant. And we'll use a fern because fern is nice. Because when you look at the life cycle of a fern, you can see with your naked eye pretty much all of the components. So that's really nice. So we'll start here. Just to point out, so here sporophyte plant is starting at the 12 o'clock. Notice here sporophyte plant is at the 9 o'clock, right? Like over here. But other than that orientation, the rest is like when we're going through this slide, they're going to have these same players. It's just a little shifted. So sporophyte plant on top. Sporophyte plant has on it, leaves, roots, all those things that you think about when you think of a plant. If we were to look closely at a fern leaf, see these little dots on it? If we were to look closely on the fern leaf, we would see on it sporangium, which are the organs that make egg and sperm. Inside that sporangium, what's the purpose of a sporangium? It's an organ that makes spores, right? So we know that meiosis has to occur inside of that sporangium because spores are haploid. So if we look inside the sporangium, you have the spore mother cells. Those are what undergo meiosis and cytokinesis to make your spores. Don't worry about tetrad right now, just worry about spores. So let's take one of those spores. Look, here's a spore, and I'll even change color just like the slide. Look, here's one spore right there. So that spore, which is now haploid, is going to grow via mitosis into a gametophyte plant. So there, that little blob is the beginnings of the gametophyte plant right there. And then that little blob will grow into a bigger gametophyte plant, which in ferns looks like a green heart, which is nice. So it's a gametophyte plant. So it's a phyte or a plant that makes gametes, egg and sperm. So we know on the gametophyte plant, there has to be organs that make egg and sperm. And there are. There is an archegonium or plural archegonia that make the eggs. And those are the things toward the top of the heart right there, those little things sticking down. And there's going to be organs that make sperm. The one organ is called an antheridium. Many of them are called an antheridia. Those are located down there at the bottom. And this is a close-up of them. So for example, oops, here. So this here is one archegonium. This here is one antheridium. Here on this gametophyte plant, this is a bunch of archegonia. This is a bunch of antheridia on that gametophyte plant. Inside the archegonium, there's going to be the egg. There it is, haploid. Inside the antheridium, there's going to be sperm. There they are. And then look, here's a sperm swimming away, right? Eventually, sperm, look, here it is, it swam. Eventually the sperm is going to swim, fertilize the egg, which is here. And when that happens, you have a new zygote, right? 2N zygote that's going to grow into a young sporophyte plant. Notice again, the color changes, right? Blue for sporophyte or diploid and yellow for gametophyte or haploid. Okay. Oh, it's just showing you the young sporophyte plant growing out of the gametophyte plant. Because remember, egg stays. Sperm swims away, but egg stays. So if egg was here on the gametophyte plant, once it's fertilized by a sperm, the new plant's going to grow from there, right? Because egg stays. So the new baby plant is going to be wherever the egg was. That's what this here is showing you. Sporophyte plant growing out of the gametophyte plant. Okay. So even though the caterpillar butterfly thing is a good way to kind of get your brain primed to understand this crazy concept of alternation of generations, not quite the same, right? The main reason it's not the same is because the caterpillar is 2N and the butterfly is 2N. It's not quite the same as the gametophyte versus sporophyte, but still two individuals living their life. Okay. This concept, again, alternation of generations, even for plant people, is kind of a weird thing to wrap your head around because it's just not something we're used to in the animal world. So today we're just learning about it for the very first time, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? But just so you know, we're going to go through this so many times that even within a week and a half, you're going to be like, oh yeah, antheridium. Oh yeah, archegonium. Ah, sporophyte, gametophyte. Ah, you're going to be bored by it, honestly, within like a week and a half. So we're going to learn about the alternation of generations in lots of different plant phyla. But one thing I want to get you ready for is there's the switch in a dominant generation as plants become more evolved. So in the primitive plants, which we're going to start learning about next week, your mosses, your liverworts, and hornworts, it's the gametophyte generation that's dominant. What does that mean, dominant? Gametophyte generation dominant in those mosses, liverworts, hornworts. What I mean by dominant is if you're walking around and you see with your eye a moss or a liverwort or a hornwort, but you probably don't know what those look like yet, but maybe a moss you're used to. So walking around, you see a moss. What you're seeing with your eye is the gametophyte plant. The sporophyte plant in mosses is super reduced. On the other hand, if you're walking around and you see a fern or a conifer or any plant with a flower on it, any plant with a flower on it, you're looking at sporophyte generation, because in the higher evolved meaning it took longer to get there over evolutionary time, plants. So in the majority of the world's plants, it's the sporophyte generation is dominant. So if you're sitting by a window right now and you look out and you see a tree, you're looking at the sporophyte generation, right? If you're looking out your window right now, if you have one, and you see a bush, you're looking at the sporophyte generation. If you see grass, you're looking at the sporophyte generation. Most plants have the sporophyte generation as dominant, meaning the part of the life cycle that it exists as the most. Just to have some pretty pictures. So here's an example of going from plants that have the gametophyte generation dominant and plants that have sporophyte generation dominant. So for example, here's moss. This is what moss looks like. You see the green stuff on the rocks? That's moss. And you are looking, that green stuff is the gametophyte plant. Because in mosses, the gametophyte plant is dominant, right? There's a close-up right there on the right, that green stuff. That green stuff, that's the gametophyte plant. You can see it with your naked eye. Just to give you kind of a preview to when we start learning about mosses. So the gametophyte plant in mosses is the fluffy green thing. The fluffy green thing is the gametophyte plant. Sporophyte plant on moss barely even looks like anything, barely even looks like a plant. It's like, most of the time it's like this little stick and then like this little thing on top, and that's it. That doesn't look like a plant. That looks like almost a mushroom, right? So the green fluffy is the gametophyte plant, and that's the dominant generation. When we get to ferns, ferns are nice because you can actually see both the gametophyte and the sporophyte plant with the naked eye, but ultimately it's the sporophyte plant that's going to be dominant. This is what we just looked at in that schematic. Remember I told you ferns have a little heart-shaped gametophyte plant? So look, here is a heart-shaped gametophyte plant under the microscope. It's going to have organs on it that make egg and sperm. There's the antheridia is on top. That's where the egg is at. Archegonia, which makes sperms down there. Eventually, the sperm and egg will fuse in fertilization, and the result will be a new sporophyte plant. Here it is emerging from, here's its root, from where the egg was. Where was the egg? The egg was on the gametophyte plant, so it's still growing up. But eventually, in the ferns, eventually, the gametophyte plant will just go away, and the sporophyte plant will just go on, live its life. Okay. See, like, so if you walk around and you see a fern with your naked eye, you're looking at a sporophyte plant, right? This is the same thing here on the that we just saw on the previous. Here's the heart-shaped gametophyte plant. Here is the new sporophyte plant emerging. Here's its root coming out. Eventually that'll keep growing until you just get this whole thing. This is all sporophyte plant. Okay. Flowering plants. When you look at a flowering plant, sporophyte is dominant, so you're looking at the sporophyte generation. In fact, by the time we get to the flowering plants, a lot of times you might need a microscope to see the gametophyte plant because it's hidden inside of the flower. Okay. This is a lot. I know this is a lot. I have been at this point in the semester 5 times now with my students, and this is definitely a lecture where you're just kind of like, what happened? But just know that that's totally normal. And as we start working through the different plants, the mosses, liverworts, hornworts, etc., these terms that we learned today, they're going to be over and over and over again. You're going to get bored. Homework, I want you to keep reading a little bit of that State of the World's Plants and Fungi that's on Canvas. Again, it says pages 10 to 17, but as you saw, most of the page is covered with pictures, so it's really not that much to read. And then to next week, we're going to start learning about plants. So we're going to learn about the mosses, which are in the phylum Bryophyta. Just a reminder for anyone who wasn't here last class, there's no lab on Monday. Lab doesn't start until the 31st of January. A couple other reminders. The syllabus is on Canvas. Please make sure to read the whole thing. You do not have to purchase a textbook for this course. I provide it to you for free on Canvas. Yeah, lab will begin not next week, but the following week, and that means that lab materials will be posted on Canvas next week. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. And I know, like I said, this is a hard to wrap your mind around, alternation of generations, but just hang in there. Shayaka, am I saying your name correctly?
Shayake. For the
Shayake.
lecture slides,
Mm-hmm.
can you post those before the lecture so we could annotate while doing the lecture?
So normally, no, I don't do that because the problem is sometimes the lecture slides have something that I like to be able to kind of make sure that they're 100% good to go before I post them. So no. Also, sometimes I might add content while the lecture is happening, and I want that to be included. So my advice to you would be to just make notes. Make notes in a notebook, and then when you get the lecture slides, you can kind of add to them. Geethika, I'm not sure. Oh, wait, is it Janique? I see 2 names here.
So this is Geethika.
Geethika, thank you.
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Yeah, so quick question for the
Sure.
so this is for the homework, but
Okay.
like I just wanted to make sure there's like no assignments right now, right? As of now.
So yeah, correct. So as of right now, there is no assignment. I have to look here. Oops. All right, let me stop sharing this. And let me just pull up really quickly here this yeah, let me just pull this up quickly. Correct. Yes. So first assignment won't be due until February 1st. So if you look at here, I can do this. Here, Geethika, let me share this here.
Thank you.
Share. Yep. Can you see the
The syllabus.
Yeah. So if you pull that up, this is how you can tell. So I always make them kind of italicized and and like capitals to try to like highlight it for you. But yeah, so basically the first assignment will be, so the first assignment covers lectures 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
We just finished assignment 2, or sorry, we just we just finished lecture 2.
Oh, okay.
So if the assignment is due the 1st of February, I might even post it this weekend just because we've already covered the material. I think usually though lab will help to understand some of the material. So for example, you see like the next one is due on the 8th,
Mm-hmm.
and that covers lectures 3 and 4. Lectures 3 and 4 will happen on Tuesday and Thursday, and then you'll have lab on that following Monday. So I'll post that assignment after you have lab.
Okay, I understand. So you're saying that these assignments will help with the lab.
No,
Or
I'm saying the other way around.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, but just so you know, whenever these assignments are due, they'll be posted for at least a week, because it's always on material that we've already covered. So I could post I don't know if I have it ready, but this assignment 1 will be posted on Canvas no later than the 25th, which is next Tuesday. So you'll have a whole week to do it.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Yeah, and they're not meant to be hard. They're not meant to be hard. They're meant to be straightforward so that you guys can get points. So and you get a whole week to do them. So there's no excuse.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Geetika. Any other questions before we break? Oh, Hala, is it you? I think, no, maybe. I saw an email from somebody today that I haven't gotten back to it yet. So I'm just letting you know, if you sent me an email within the last day or so. I was traveling yesterday. So I'm a little behind on emails, but I'll get to them today, I promise. Yeah, Hawa, sorry, Hawa. Yeah, yeah, I will I will definitely get back to you today. Kiana, you have a question?
Yes, those diagrams that you have, are they from the textbook, or is it from the book that we're currently reading?
The diagrams of alternation of generations.
Yes.
So I actually made those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're talking about, hold on. You're talking about this, right?
Yeah, like all those stuff. Yeah.
This thing? Yeah. Actually, believe it or not, I actually made this because I felt like but so there are additional diagrams in the textbook. They will be in chapter, I think I put on the syllabus, it said it says chapter 3, 8, or 12. I don't have the PDF of the book pulled up right now, but it's going to be in one of those chapters.
Okay.
Yeah, I can, if you know what, if you send me an email reminder, and I'll look through the textbook and I'll tell you what page the best diagrams are on for alternation of generations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, send me an email so I don't forget, okay?
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you, Kiana. Any other questions before we break? Give you guys a few minutes or a minute. No? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good weekend.